Two white officers bound a black woman to an oak tree, filming her humiliation for their entertainment. They had no idea they were recording evidence of their own destruction. In the abandoned industrial district outside Millbrook County, where rusted machinery cast long shadows through sparse oak groves, Officer Marcus Webb kicked at loose gravel while his partner Travis adjusted his utility belt. The woman they dragged from the stolen Honda was now secured to the largest oak with plastic zip ties, her wrists already showing red marks from the tight restraints. "Registration's fake, license is bogus," Webb sneered, circling her like a predator. "What's your real name, sweetheart? Or do you people just make them up as you go?" His voice carried that particular brand of cruelty that came from years of unchecked authority. The woman's dark blue work uniform was torn at the shoulder, a thin line of blood trickling from her split lip where Webb had helped her out of the vehicle. She didn't respond. Her brown eyes remained fixed on the canopy above, as if she could see through the twisted branches to something beyond this moment. That calm infuriated Webb more than any screaming would have. "Look at me when I'm talking to you." He grabbed her chin roughly, forcing her to meet his gaze. Still, she said nothing. Her silence wasn't submission, it was something else entirely, something that made Travis shift uncomfortably behind his partner. Webb pulled out his personal phone, not his department-issued device. "You know what? The boys back at the station are gonna love this." He activated the camera, making sure to capture her face clearly. "Say cheese, princess. You're about to be famous in all the wrong circles." Travis watched his partner's performance with growing unease. They'd been partners for 3 years, and he'd seen Webb's methods before, but this felt different. More personal. More dangerous. "Marcus, maybe we should just..." "Should what?" Webb spun around, his face flushed with adrenaline and something darker. "Process her like a normal citizen." "She's not normal, Travis. Look at her. She thinks she's above this, above us." He turned back to the woman, leaning close enough that she could smell the coffee on his breath. "But she's learning different now, isn't she?" The woman's breathing remained steady despite the zip ties cutting into her circulation. She studied Webb's face with an intensity that seemed to catalog every detail, the small scar above his left eyebrow, the way his jaw clenched when he was angry, the particular shade of blue in his eyes. It was as if she was memorizing him. "Cat got your tongue?" Webb whispered, his voice dropping to something almost intimate in its menace. "That's fine. I prefer the quiet ones anyway. Means I can hear myself think while I work." He stepped back and began filming again, this time narrating like a nature documentary. "Here we have a prime example of criminal behavior in its natural habitat. Notice how it refuses to cooperate with lawful commands. Notice how it maintains that arrogant posture even when properly restrained." Travis felt sick. "Webb, come on, man. This isn't what? Isn't justice?" Webb's laugh was sharp and bitter. "You think she'd hesitate to hurt you if the roles were reversed? You think any of them would?" The woman finally spoke, her voice cutting through Webb's rant like a blade through silk. "You think tying me up changes anything?" Her words were quiet but carried a weight that made both officers pause. It wasn't defiance or fear, it was certainty. The kind of certainty that comes from knowing something the other person doesn't. Webb's expression darkened. "What did you say?" "I asked if you think this changes anything." She looked directly into his phone camera as she spoke, her voice never wavering. "Because it doesn't." For a moment, Webb seemed genuinely rattled by her composure. Then his anger returned tenfold. "We'll see about that." He pocketed his phone and activated his body camera, his demeanor instantly shifting to professional mode. Subject became aggressive during routine traffic stop. Had to restrain for officer safety. Visible injuries appear self-inflicted during resistance. The transformation was seamless, practiced. Travis realized he was watching a performance his partner had perfected over years of similar encounters. How many others had there been? 20 minutes into their interrogation, the sound of heavy machinery broke the industrial district's silence. A cement mixer truck rumbled down the access road, its driver, a Latino man in his 50s, slowing as he spotted the police cruiser. Webb immediately drew his service weapon, not quite pointing it at the truck but making its presence known. "Keep moving, amigo. Nothing to see here." The driver's eyes found the woman tied to the oak tree. His expression shifted from curiosity to horror. "Is she okay? Does she need?" "She needs you to mind your own business and keep driving," Webb interrupted, his hand resting on his holster. "Unless you want to explain to your family why you didn't come home tonight." The driver hesitated, clearly torn between self-preservation and conscience. The woman met his eyes through the truck's windshield and gave an almost imperceptible shake of her head. "Not yet. Not like this." Reluctantly, the cement mixer continued down the road, but Webb noticed the driver reaching for something, probably his phone. "Travis, get the plate number on that truck. We might need to pay our friend a visit later." Webb's voice carried a promise that made his partner's stomach turn. "Marcus, maybe we should wrap this up. We've been out here almost an hour. We're done when I say we're done." Webb turned back to the woman, his earlier professional mask completely gone. "Now, where were we? Oh, right. You were about to tell me who you really are." He pulled out a tactical knife, the blade gleaming in the filtered sunlight. "See, I've been doing this a long time. I know when someone's hiding something. The way you sit, the way you breathe, the way you look at me like you know something I don't." He used the knife to lift her chin. "But here's what I know, you're nobody. Just another criminal who thought she could outsmart the system." The woman's eyes followed the blade without fear, as if she was evaluating its craftsmanship rather than its threat. "You're very sure of yourself." "I have reason to be." Webb leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper meant only for her. "You want to know how many people like you I've dealt with? How many times I've stood exactly where I'm standing now, with someone exactly like you tied to something they can't break free from?" She tilted her head slightly, studying him with renewed interest. "How many?" The question caught him off guard. He'd expected pleading or anger, not curiosity. "Enough to know how this ends." "And how does it end?" Webb's smile was cold. "With you understanding your place in the world. With you remembering this moment every time you think about stepping out of line again." He gestured to Travis. "My partner here thinks I'm being too hard on you. But he's young, soft. He hasn't learned yet that some lessons can only be taught one way." In the distance, another vehicle approached, a jogger this time, a middle-aged white woman in expensive athletic wear. She slowed as she noticed the scene, her hand moving instinctively toward her phone. Webb cursed under his breath. Too many witnesses. This was supposed to be simple, private. Just another unreported encounter in an area where nobody important ever came. But as he watched the jogger pretend to stretch while obviously photographing the scene, Webb realized that his perfect isolated spot had just become very public indeed. Back at Millbrook County Sheriff's Department, Sergeant Elena Rodriguez was having the kind of day that made her question her 20-year career in law enforcement. The department's ancient computer system had crashed twice, the coffee machine was broken, and now she was staring at Webb's incident report with growing suspicion. "Vehicle theft suspect, no identification, resisted arrest," she read aloud to herself. The report was technically complete but felt hollow, like a shell with nothing inside. Webb had a talent for writing reports that said everything required and nothing useful. Rodriguez pulled up the department's incident database and cross-referenced Webb's recent reports. A pattern emerged that made her uncomfortable: too many no identification suspects, too many resisted arrest notations, too many cases that quietly disappeared into the system's bureaucratic maze. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number: "Check social media. Your officers in Industrial District. #Millbrook Shame." Attached was a grainy photo taken from a distance showing two figures near a tree, one clearly restrained. Rodriguez's blood went cold. She immediately tried calling Webb's radio, but got only static. Travis's radio was similarly silent. Either they were in a dead zone, or they'd turned their radios off. Neither option was acceptable. She drove to the industrial district herself, arriving to find Webb and Travis loading someone into their patrol car. The woman was no longer restrained, but Rodriguez could see the red marks on her wrists, the blood on her face. "Webb. What's your status?" Webb's response was smooth, practiced. "Suspect became compliant after we explained the situation. Processing for booking now." But Rodriguez noticed something in the woman's posture as she sat in the back of the patrol car. Despite her injuries, despite the circumstances, she carried herself with an authority that didn't match Webb's narrative. This wasn't someone who'd been broken by the experience, this was someone who was waiting. Back at the station, Rodriguez watched through the observation window as the woman sat in interview room 3. She hadn't spoken since being brought in, hadn't asked for a lawyer, hadn't asked for anything. She just sat with perfect posture, her hands folded, her expression unreadable. Something about her bearing nagged at Rodriguez. The way she held her head, the set of her shoulders, it reminded her of something, someone. Rodriguez pulled out her files from the Homeland Security training conference she'd attended 6 months earlier. The 3-day event had brought together federal agents, military personnel, and local law enforcement for counterterrorism briefings. She flipped through the conference materials until she found the group photos from the final day. There, in the back row among the federal presenters, was a woman who bore a striking resemblance to their current detainee. The nameplate in the photo was partially obscured by someone's shoulder, showing only V. Chen, Homeland SEC. Rodriguez felt her pulse quicken. She cross-referenced the conference roster with the photo, but several pages were missing from her folder. Someone had been sloppy with the documentation, and now she couldn't verify her suspicion. She tried accessing the Homeland Security database through their department's limited federal portal, but their clearance level wasn't high enough for personnel records. All she could determine was that someone named V. Chen had been a primary presenter on domestic threat assessment and response protocols. Rodriguez confronted Webb in the hallway. "Marcus, I need you to tell me exactly what happened out there." Webb's expression hardened. "I already filed my report. Routine traffic stop, fake documents, attempted to flee. Standard procedure." Standard procedure doesn't usually involve zip ties and industrial districts. She was non-compliant. "We adapted to the situation." Webb's voice carried a warning. "You questioning my judgment, Sergeant?" Rodriguez stared at him for a long moment. She'd known Webb for 8 years, had watched him gradually change from a rookie with rough edges to something harder, colder. But she'd always told herself it was just the job, just the stress of dealing with society's worst elements day after day. Now, looking at his complete lack of concern for what might have been a catastrophic mistake, she realized Webb hadn't been shaped by the job, he'd been revealed by it. "I'm questioning everything right now," she said quietly. In interview room 3, the woman they thought was a car thief continued to wait with the patience of someone who knew that every minute they delayed only made their situation worse. At 11:47 p.m., a 3-minute video appeared on multiple social media platforms simultaneously. The footage was shaky, clearly shot from a distance with a phone's maximum zoom, but the content was unmistakable. 2 white officers, one clearly identifiable as Marcus Webb from his distinctive swagger and gestures, circling a black woman zip-tied to an oak tree. The anonymous account that posted the video had been created just hours earlier, with no profile information beyond a single bio line. "Truth has no expiration date." Within the first hour, the video had been shared 15,000 times. By morning, that number would exceed 500,000. The audio was partially garbled by distance and wind, but several phrases came through with devastating clarity. "You people just make them up as you go," Webb's voice carrying across the industrial wasteland. "She thinks she's above this, above us." And most damning of all, the woman's calm response, "You think tying me up changes anything?" Local news stations picked up the story by dawn, but it was the national networks that turned it into a firestorm. CNN ran it during their morning show with the cheerin' officer filmed tying woman to tree. Fox News initially questioned the video's authenticity but quickly shifted to covering the disturbing incident under investigation. The hashtags multiplied like wildfire, hashtag Millbrook shame, hashtag who is Victoria Chen, hashtag justice for the tree victim. That last one emerged after amateur internet sleuths began trying to identify the woman in the video, cross-referencing her with missing persons reports and local arrest records. But it was a Twitter thread by @Forensic Facts that changed everything. The account, run by a former FBI video analyst, broke down the footage frame by frame, highlighting details that casual viewers had missed. Webb's tactical knife. The professional way he positioned himself for his personal recording. The woman's complete lack of surprise at her treatment, as if she'd expected exactly this kind of behavior. This isn't someone's first rodeo, the analyst wrote. Look at the perpetrator's body language. This is practice behavior. Look at the victim's composure. This is someone who's trained to observe and remember under extreme stress. The thread was retweeted 200,000 times. Celebrity responses began flooding in. A-list actors shared the video with comments like, "This is America in 2024, and, we see you, sister." Professional athletes posted solidarity messages. The mayor of Millbrook County was forced to call an emergency press conference for 2 p.m., just 14 hours after the video first appeared. But the most significant response came from an unexpected source. At 6:23 a.m., the official Twitter account of the Department of Homeland Security posted a single tweet, "DHS is aware of recent social media content involving potential misconduct toward federal personnel. Investigation ongoing." The tweet was deleted within 20 minutes, but screenshots had already spread across every platform. Federal personnel. The two words that changed everything. Webb woke up to 147 missed calls and a text from his union representative, "Don't talk to anyone. Don't go anywhere. Wait for instructions." But Webb's first instinct wasn't self-preservation, it was defiance. He posted a Facebook Live video from his kitchen, still in his undershirt, hair disheveled from sleep but eyes blazing with righteous anger. "You want to know what really happened yesterday? I did my job. I followed my training. Some woman steals a car, gives us fake documents, tries to run, and suddenly I'm the bad guy because someone with a phone decided to play director." The live video attracted 50,000 viewers in real time, most of them commenting things that would have made Webb turn off his phone if he'd been reading them. "You know what the real problem is?" Webb continued, warming up to his rant. "Everyone's so worried about being politically correct that we can't even do police work anymore. Well, I'm not apologizing for protecting this community. I'm not apologizing for treating criminals like criminals, no matter what color they are or what lies they tell about who they think they are." The video was screen recorded by hundreds of viewers. Even after Webb deleted it in a panic 20 minutes later, it continued spreading across platforms, often paired with the original tree footage in side-by-side comparisons. Legal experts on cable news began using phrases like federal crime and civil rights violation. Former prosecutors explained the potential charges Webb could face: deprivation of rights under color of law, conspiracy against rights, potentially even kidnapping if the federal angle proved true. By noon, #ArrestWebbNow was trending nationally. The Millbrook County Sheriff's Department phones were ringing constantly. Protest organizers were already planning demonstrations for the weekend. And in interview room 3, Victoria Chen continued to wait with the patience of someone who knew that justice, while sometimes slow, was absolutely inevitable. At 2:17 a.m., exactly 26 hours after the initial video leak, a convoy of 3 white armored vehicles rolled into the Millbrook County Sheriff's Department parking lot. No sirens, no flashing lights, just the quiet authority of federal power asserting itself in a place that had never seen anything more threatening than a drunk driving checkpoint. The lead vehicle's doors opened with military precision, and out stepped Agent Sarah Kim from the Department of Homeland Security's Internal Affairs Division. She was flanked by 2 federal marshals and carried a leather briefcase that seemed to contain the weight of impending consequences. Her credentials identified her as a senior investigator with clearance levels that made the local sheriff's security access look like a library card. Kim walked directly to the front desk and placed a federal court order on the counter. "I'm here to retrieve Special Agent Victoria Chen, Counterterrorism Strategic Operations Division. She's been unlawfully detained for 31 hours. The desk sergeant, who had been fielding angry phone calls all night, looked at the paperwork with the expression of someone watching his career crumble in real time. "Ma'am, we have someone in custody, but her identification was destroyed or confiscated during an illegal detention," Kim finished coldly. "Where is she?" Rodriguez appeared from the back offices, having been awakened by the overnight supervisor. She'd suspected something like this was coming, but the reality of federal agents in her station at 2 a.m. still felt surreal. "Agent Kim. I'm Sergeant Rodriguez. I've been trying to verify your agent's identity through proper channels." "Sergeant Rodriguez." Kim's voice carried the kind of authority that ended conversations rather than starting them. "Special Agent Chen has been working undercover for 18 months on a domestic terrorism investigation. Her cover required minimal digital footprint and false documentation. What your officers interpreted as fake ID was actually classified federal credentials." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Rodriguez felt the blood drain from her face as the full implications hit her. Not only had Webb assaulted a federal agent, he potentially compromised a counterterrorism operation. Kim continued, "Agent Chen volunteered for this assignment after the January 6 investigations revealed concerning connections between white supremacist groups and certain law enforcement personnel. Her mission was to identify potentially compromised officers in rural departments." The irony was devastating. Webb hadn't just randomly selected a victim, he'd walked directly into a trap designed specifically for officers like him. "She's in interview room 3, Rodriguez whispered, her voice barely audible. Kim nodded to the marshals, who moved with practiced efficiency toward the interview rooms. Agent Chen's extraction was supposed to occur quietly next week after her investigation concluded. "Your officers' actions have accelerated our timeline considerably." The door to interview room 3 opened, and Victoria Chen stood with the fluid grace of someone whose muscles had remained coiled and ready despite hours of waiting. She was still wearing the torn work uniform, still bore the marks of Webb's assault, but her transformation was immediate and complete. This wasn't a victim being rescued, this was a federal agent returning to active duty. "Agent Kim," Chen's voice carried none of the uncertainty or fear that would have been expected from someone who'd endured 31 hours of detention. "Status report. Full federal investigation authorized. Media coverage extensive. Local department cooperation, variable." Kim's eyes found Rodriguez. "We'll need complete access to Officer Webb's personnel files, body camera footage, and any personal recording devices." Rodriguez nodded numbly. "Webb's been suspended pending investigation. Travis is cooperating fully. We've preserved all evidence." Chen looked at Rodriguez with something that might have been respect. "You tried to verify my identity through proper channels. That showed good instincts." She paused. "This wasn't about you, Sergeant. This was about identifying officers who see someone vulnerable and choose cruelty over duty." The federal team prepared to leave, but Chen turned back once more. "Officer Webb filmed his assault on me with his personal phone. That recording, combined with the witness footage, provides a complete picture of his mindset and methodology. We believe he's done this before." As if summoned by her words, Webb himself appeared in the station's front entrance. He'd ignored his union representative's advice and driven directly to work, apparently believing that showing up for his shift would somehow normalize the situation. He walked through the front doors and stopped dead when he saw the federal agents. "What's this about?" Webb demanded, his voice carrying its usual authority even as his eyes registered the tactical gear and federal badges surrounding him. Agent Kim stepped forward. "Marcus Webb, you're under federal arrest for deprivation of rights under color of law," conspiracy against rights, and assault on a federal officer. The marshals moved to flank him as she continued reading his rights. Webb's face cycled through confusion, anger, and finally desperate defiance. "You can't do this. I was doing my job." She had fake documents. She resisted. Agent Chen was conducting an authorized federal investigation using classified credentials, Kim interrupted. "You had no legal authority to detain her, no justification for your actions, and no excuse for what you did to her." Webb's eyes found Victoria Chen, and for the first time since this began, his composure cracked completely. The woman he'd tied to a tree, the woman he'd threatened and humiliated, was staring back at him with the calm professionalism of someone who'd been in control of the situation from the very beginning. "You set me up," he whispered. "No," Chen replied quietly. "You revealed yourself." The trial of Marcus Webb became a watershed moment in American discussions about police accountability and systemic racism. Federal prosecutors, armed with Webb's own recordings and multiple witness testimonies, built a case that left no room for doubt about his character or his pattern of behavior. Webb's personal phone contained over 40 videos of similar encounters spanning 3 years. Traffic stops that became humiliation sessions. Interrogations that became psychological torture. A documented pattern of targeting Black and Hispanic drivers in isolated locations where his actions wouldn't be witnessed or questioned. The prosecution's star witness wasn't Victoria Chen, it was Webb himself. His Facebook Live rant, viewed over 2 million times before he deleted it, became Exhibit A in demonstrating his unrepentant mindset. "I'm not apologizing for treating criminals like criminals, no matter what color they are," the prosecution played those words repeatedly, letting Webb's own voice condemn him. But it was the testimony of his previous victims that transformed the trial from a single incident into an indictment of systemic failure. Maria Santos, a nurse he'd detained for suspicious behavior while driving home from a night shift. James Wright, a college student he'd arrested for matching a suspect description while walking to his dorm. Keisha Williams, a teacher he'd pulled over for erratic driving after she'd attended a Black Lives Matter rally. Each victim testified to the same pattern: isolation, humiliation, threats, and then reports that painted them as the aggressors. Each had filed complaints that were dismissed or buried. Each had been told that their word against a police officer's wouldn't stand up in court. Officer Webb didn't just assault Agent Chen, prosecutor Janet Morrison told the jury during closing arguments. He revealed a system that allowed him to terrorize citizens for years without consequences. Agent Chen's federal status didn't make her assault worse, it just made it impossible to cover up. Webb represented himself after firing 3 different lawyers, each of whom had advised him to accept a plea deal. His arrogance remained intact even as the evidence mounted against him. During his own testimony, he maintained that he was the victim of a federal conspiracy designed to destroy good police officers. "They sent her to entrap me," Webb insisted from the witness stand. "This whole thing was a setup from the beginning. They wanted to make an example of someone, and they picked me because I'm not afraid to do the hard parts of this job." The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all federal charges. Judge Patricia Harrison sentenced Webb to 35 years in federal prison without possibility of parole, citing the systematic and premeditated nature of the defendant's crimes. As Webb was led away in federal custody, he looked directly into the courtroom cameras and sneered, "I'll be remembered when all of you are forgotten." Victoria Chen, who had attended every day of the trial but never testified, finally spoke to reporters outside the courthouse. "This case was never about me," she said simply. "It was about every person who was hurt by Officer Webb and every officer who looked the other way. Justice delayed isn't justice denied if we learn from it." Chen declined all offers for interviews, book deals, and documentary appearances. Instead, she quietly accepted a new assignment, developing training protocols for police academies nationwide. Her curriculum didn't focus on legal procedures or tactical responses, it focused on the moment of choice every officer faces when they encounter someone vulnerable. "Authority without accountability becomes tyranny," she would tell each new class of cadets. Your badge gives you power over others. What you do with that power defines not just your career, but your character. The case sparked legislative changes in 12 states, requiring independent oversight of police misconduct investigations and mandatory federal reporting of certain types of complaints. The Victoria Chen Act, as activists named it, established new protocols for investigating officers with patterns of complaints against minority citizens. But perhaps the most significant change was cultural. The hashtag #NameThemAllRememberThem became a repository for stories of police misconduct that had been previously dismissed or ignored. Victims who had been told their experiences didn't matter found their voices amplified by Chen's example. Officer Travis, Webb's former partner, became a key figure in police reform efforts. His testimony against Webb had been devastating, but his subsequent career change was even more significant. He left law enforcement entirely and became a counselor specializing in helping other officers report misconduct without fear of retaliation. I watched Marcus become something monstrous over 3 years, Travis said during a TED Talk that went viral. But the real tragedy is that I became something worse, I became complicit. Silence in the face of evil is not neutrality. It's collaboration. The oak tree in the industrial district became an unofficial monument. Local activists placed a simple plaque at its base, "Justice grows in the strangest places." People began leaving flowers, not for Victoria Chen, but for all the victims whose stories had finally been heard. Chen's investigation had originally targeted potential domestic terrorism connections, but what it revealed was something more insidious: the routine brutalization of citizens by officers who knew the system would protect them. Webb's connections to white supremacist social media groups were documented but ultimately irrelevant. His actions spoke louder than any ideology. 5 years later, the case study of United States versus Marcus Webb is taught in law schools, police academies, and ethics courses across the country. Students analyze not just Webb's crimes, but the system that enabled them and the courage required to expose them. Chen, now a deputy director at Homeland Security, still refuses most interview requests. But she agreed to speak at a conference on police reform, where a young officer asked her if she'd ever regretted taking the undercover assignment. "Regret implies I had a choice," Chen answered. "When you have the ability to expose injustice and you choose not to, you become complicit in it. I couldn't live with that silence." The officer pressed further, "But weren't you afraid of what might happen?" Chen was quiet for a long moment. "I was terrified. But fear of personal consequences can't outweigh the duty to protect others. That's true whether you're a federal agent or a local patrol officer. We all take the same oath to serve and protect. The question is whether we have the courage to honor it." The story of Marcus Webb and Victoria Chen continues to resonate because it represents a fundamental truth about power and accountability. Webb believed his authority made him untouchable. Chen proved that justice, while sometimes delayed, is inevitable when good people refuse to look away. As Chen often reminds her audiences, respect isn't demanded, it's earned through actions. Real change happens when we stop commenting from the sidelines and start holding each other accountable. Share these stories, but more importantly, act on them. Subscribe to justice, not just to content. The oak tree still stands in the industrial district, its branches now reaching higher toward the light, a living reminder that truth, like justice, has deep roots and grows strongest when tended by those who refuse to let it be forgotten.